Welcome to Eddie's podcast. Nothing less than a magnificent show, hosted by Eddie Stevens and his much better half, Jackie. Are you ready? I sure as hell know I am. So all you have to do is sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this magnificent podcast. Just go to www.eddiepodcast.com and click that subscribe button.
Welcome to today's edition of Eddie's podcast, where I have two really cool guests from Altered State Tattoo, Michael Pucciarelli and Scott White. Good morning, and thank you for joining Eddie's podcast. You guys have been working in the same studio for like 22 years. Can you take me back and tell me how you met up and, how all that happened?
I can go way back before we even started tattooing. I used to roadie for Pooch's band. He was in a band called Raped Ape, and I drew some of their logos. And then we worked at a karaoke machine factory together, QC karaoke machines. Remember that, Pooch?
Oh yeah, the singing machine.
The singing machine, yeah. Yep. And so we met back in 93, 94.
Yeah, that's right.
Prior to being tattoos, you guys were both kind of you had a musical career. Pooch, you were in Raped Ape. Scott, you were the bassist for Gone Mad.
Yep.
How did you make the transition from music or why did you make the transition from music to a more visual form of art?
Well, I mean, for me, I was also doing some art in the band, doing flyers, album covers. I started airbrushing. I think one of our first demos was like a pen and ink drawing. And then finally, when we made a demo later, maybe like 93, I was into airbrushing. So I airbrushed the cover. I was really into H.R. Giger's artwork. So that was my inspiration. So I was working with the airbrush. And then eventually, I was apprenticing with a guy named Big Jeff, a tattooer. My bass player at the time, Dan Cleveland, who went by Rattlehead, he was going to get tattooed by this guy. And Big Jeff worked in his house. And he told me, come with you, and we'll bring your artwork and show it to Jeff. And he's opening his own shop, and maybe you can become a tattoo artist. So I brought all my drawings, showed him, and he liked what I was doing. And he said, yeah, sure, I'll apprentice you. I'll give you your first tattoo if you want for free. And I said, oh, okay, great, And I believe I was about 18 at the time, So I went to, eventually went there, got tattooed by him. He started drawing it on me. And it was something that I had drawn. It was a skull with like a spiked ball in the mouth. And he started drawing it on me, and it was pretty small. And I was like, I want it bigger. I want to take up my whole upper arm. And he's like, well, I'll have to charge you for it. And I was like, no problem. I'll pay you for it. I don't have it right now, but I'll pay you later. So that was my first tattoo experience. Got home and, went to sleep, whatever. The next morning, my mom comes in the room, looks at my arm and goes, tell me that's fake. I said, it's fake. She goes, you're full of shit. And she walked out pissed off. So I ended up apprenticing there and, drawing tattoos on people with big pens for him. He would say, okay, draw this and get this ready. And while I'm tattooing this, you draw this, and then I'll tattoo them. So right off the bat, I was drawing right on the skin, So I apprenticed with him for a while. Maybe I'd say it was about a year, but I was also in the band, and the band was really starting to do things. We were busy. I wasn't able to be there. And he said, well, why don't you go ahead and do the band thing? You can always come back to tattooing. He goes, you really need to be here to learn. So I said, okay, yeah, let me focus on the band. And then I believe years later, me and Scott were working together at the singing machine. And I think I decided at that point, after you had quit the singing machine.
Yeah, I quit and I started working at Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, and after you left there, I was there by myself for a little bit, and I was like, man, I really just want to do this tattoo thing. So I started doing it out of my house. And a friend of mine who was tattooed in his house came and helped me and was there when I did my first tattoo on myself in my house, which was in Mill Lake Circle where Scott lived. And also
you lived in the haunted house.
Yeah, that is right. It was a haunted house. And that's a very interesting story too, where, you know, well, tell them what you experienced in that house.
We were over there hanging out one night. There's like, I don't know, you were actually tattooing somebody, and there's, I don't know, 4 or 5 people there, but they're all kind of watching you. And I went and sat down on the couch, and I was looking at a book. You had a big art book. I don't remember which one it was, but it was a big one. And I was just like, you know, in it. And you know how you have that feeling when someone comes and sits down next to you, like, you know, a few feet away? Well, that happened. And I was 100% sure someone sat like a few feet away from me. And I'm like, hey, check this out. And I looked, and there was nobody there. And I was 100% sure there was somebody there, you know? Yeah. So, and I also felt different, you know, weird things there, you know, like someone was like right behind me and there was nobody there, you know? Yeah,
I had a lot of that because in that room that I tattooed in, I also built models and stuff. And I think if you look behind Scott right there, you'll see there's a model on the right-hand side that I painted. Yeah, on your left. Yeah. I painted that model there in that room, you know, and I had, anyway, when I was sitting there working on models, painting, building, at night, I would always think that my wife was behind me, my ex-wife was behind me, and I would turn and she was sleeping, you know. Those were the minor things I experienced, but there was a lot of other weird stuff. Like one night in the bedroom, we thought we heard somebody say something like out loud. It was a male voice, like, "What are you doing?" And we both were like, "What? Who's that? Somebody's in our house," you know. And I immediately looked outside. There was nobody outside or nothing. It was, and we were both convinced that there's something going on in this place, you know. And
so was that used for artistic inspiration, or were you like, I got to get the fuck out of here?
No, well, I'll tell you something. Another part of the story that's pretty interesting. When I first moved in there, I had a lot of weird dreams, and I had a lot of, I call them out-of-body experiences, but they were just vivid dreams. I really don't know. I don't know if I believe in that stuff or not, but I did have some things there where I was floating around in that house. And I remember floating around in the ceiling and confronting something. I couldn't see it, but I was just telling them, look, this is my house. You need to leave. I want you out of here. Get out of my house. So there was that too. So I don't know. I mean, I was always into, you know, strange stuff and occult things. I read a lot of books and stuff about that. So I have a vivid imagination. So it's hard for me to say, well, you know, is that real or is it just my imagination? I don't know, you know what I mean? But then I'm going to tell you one more thing that really summed it up was that a couple other guys I jammed with years later, a guy ended up living in that place. And he said to me, you lived in Mill Lake Circle, whatever the address was? Yeah. Is that place haunted? I said, yeah, I guess so. If you think it was, then yeah. So
it definitely was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, I did some tattooing in that house and built a lot of models and all that stuff. And we had a lot of parties there. It was fun. But then eventually, let's see. So after tattooing the house, my other buddy came to help me do my first tattoo. Then a couple of weeks later, I heard he got in trouble because he tattooed an underage girl in his house, and her dad was a cop. So the cops came, took his equipment, and I was like, I can't tattoo in my house anymore. I got to get into a shop. So I went to this guy Scully, who was working with Big Jeff back when I was apprenticing with him. He had a shop called Treasure Coast Tattoos on was it Federal near Woolbright. So I ended up going there and asking him if I could work there. You know, he knew I had a day job. He said, yeah, well, the only thing is I close around 5 or 6. I said, well, I'll come in at 5 or 6 and just keep the place open, tattoo. He said, okay, don't quit your day job. I quit my day job. I was going to tattoo. There's no way I could do both. So he said, okay. So I ended up working there for probably about a year, I think, something like that. And then I decided to, you know, open my own shop. And looked around. I was going to open in Del Rey, not that far from where he was. Somehow, okay, I had to go before the commissioners in Del Rey. It got on the news, and then he found out about it because another tattooer named Whitey saw it and told him, and then he called me up. He said, "Oh, I see you're trying to open a shop right down the street from me." I said, "Yeah, but they're not going to let me." And he goes, "Well, doesn't matter. You're fired. You're out. Just come get your shit." So, I tried to smooth it over with him. He was pretty pissed, So it was just a little too close. And that's something I learned too, was that, that's not how it's done, and I was young, and I learned a bit from that. I ended up opening in Lake Worth, and that was in 96. So.
And you had that shop until just a couple of years ago when you opened the Boynton, which is really a neat, beautiful studio, by the way.
Yeah, we were all pretty much unhappy being in Lake Worth. It was getting worse and worse. There was a lot of people just kind of like hanging out in front of the shop, and the pimp with his girl and all his stuff, sleeping under the car, and then asking people for money when they were coming in and out of the shop. And here we are, trying to run this reputable business with all appointments, and people are hassling our clients. So we're like, we got to get out of here. So we have been looking for a while. Scott, how long were we trying to move? It was like 5 years probably.
Yeah, but we can never just find the spot.
Yeah, there was a lot of problems with a lot of shopping centers didn't want tattoo shops. This was not easy. It's not easy to do this. I had one thing that almost worked out, but in the end they said no. They even got down to the point where I was saying, well, we're artists. We're going to have a gallery set up. It's not just a bunch of people hanging out, doing drugs outside. It's like, we're going to have a gallery. And they were like, well, we want to see the artwork. So I sent them a link to my website. And for some reason, that was the end of that, because I guess they didn't like what they saw. They just didn't want to do it. Yeah. But they had partners too. So it wasn't just one guy. It was a bunch of people deciding.
So once they got into the mind of Pooch.
I guess so. I guess it must have freaked them out, or maybe they just, who knows? I don't know. I really don't know for sure, but whatever. It's just one of those things where, and the reason we found a place in Boynton, it was because of Dean's stomach. So he was hungry, and he was going to the Chinese place in there, House of Pang, and in there was a tattoo shop called Etiquette Tattoo, and it was run by Pawnee, and I knew her. She had another shop too down the street for a while, and she moved there. So they were gone, and Dean goes, "Oh, look, Epic's gone. The place is available." So right off the bat, I know it's zoned for tattooing, and the shopping center will accept a tattoo shop. So it was a no-brainer.
The stars aligned.
Yep, that's it. Exactly.
And Altered State is kind of different than other studios where, in other studios you walk in, there's flash everywhere, and, they basically say, pick your tattoo and iron it on and trace it. That is not the experience you get when you walk into Altered State, is it?
No, not at all. We like to do everything custom, like personally, I'm not really a fan when people bring in a picture of a tattoo and be like, how much for this? It's like, well, somebody else already has that, like we do one of a kind custom art, not just, bangers, just get them out,
Yeah. It's kind of, when we first opened, in 96, we had flash for a while.
Yeah.
And eventually we took it all down and replaced it with art. And by the time we moved, we were like, look, this is what we want to do, is have a big open place where people can see the art, they can see us tattooing. Where the other shop, it was a little tough. They couldn't really even look at the art because it was so small. So we had more space. We could, do what we wanted to do. And everything's good so far. I mean, I love it being there, and it's working out. So
yeah, back when I started, which was 97, I was still working at Mercedes-Benz, and I'd come by the shop every night because Pooch used to have some people that were working at the shop, our friends Dave and Leah, and then they moved, and it was just him hanging out there. So I was like, I would stop by there every night after work. And Pooch actually said, you can draw, you should tattoo. And I was thinking, yeah, that's probably much cooler than washing cars. you know. So yeah, we ordered me some equipment. I had to order my machines from England. Remember that, Pooch? The old Mickey Sharps.
Yeah, Mickey Sharps in England. You'd have to call them, in the middle of the night or early morning to get a hold of somebody. Send a money order, international money order.
Yeah, it's much more difficult then.
And even the inks too. We had to order our inks from Texas. Had to call a guy, Phil Fairweather in Texas, and it was just everything was really small then. It was, not now. There's a supplier in every state, at least one, but there's usually 3 or 4 now, in every state. So
has the equipment evolved, or are you still using the same type of guns?
Oh, it's changed a lot. We used to use coil machines, and they were heavy. They were iron.
They vibrated a lot.
Yep, a lot of vibration, a lot of noise, real hard on the hands. Eventually could cause a lot of carpal tunnel. A lot of artists have that problem with their hands now. And then things changed over to rotary machines. And the rotary machines now have evolved into a rotary pen. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's night and day. And most tattooers have changed over. There's still some people that prefer the old style. But at this point, it's almost the same. There's a little bit of difference with the outlining, I think. But you compensate and you find the right needles and this and that. And I've got to the point where, it doesn't make that much difference to me. I'm fine with the pens. I think they work great, and it saves my hands. So.
I like the pens because they're lighter weight and they're balanced. There's not a big heavy thing hanging off the back,
Yeah, that's the thing. The daunting task of first starting a tattoo is when you pick that thing up and you're like used to using a pencil or a paintbrush. This thing is so heavy, it's tilting your hand back, and it's hard to make a straight line with something like that, And after a while, you get used to it, and then it's like second nature. And then when you change to a light rotary, you have the same problem again, where it's like, wow, this is really light. I'm having trouble making a straight line. So then you get used to that.
So if you guys aren't using Flash, what exactly is the process for someone to create a tattoo with you? Does it take multiple visits? What is that like?
Well, yeah. So basically, what we do is try to just pick their brain, see what they want. Most people will have the idea. They'll just right off the bat either send us a picture, show us what they want. So, it involves either now taking a picture or taking a tracing of the area, and you got to make it fit the body. So this is the first and foremost thing. So you get the tracing or you get the photo, and I work on the computer. I do everything in Photoshop. So I'll take my photos, bring them in there, and I can draw around the screen with a Cintiq monitor. You can draw on the screen. Scott uses the Cintiq also, but I believe now you use just the iPad, right?
Yeah, I switched over to the iPad Pro. I just like it because it's portable. Like, I don't really enjoy being anchored to a desk for hours, while drawing something. It's like, I like being able to just, go chill on the, sit on the couch and draw, or, go out to another room or go outside or whatever. And, just bring it to the shop, and that way I can make changes there too. So the Cintiq is better, as far as just its features and resolution, but I can, for what I'm doing, I can get away with the iPad Pro, and a lot of people are actually switching over to the iPad Pros just for that reason, because they can just throw it in your backpack and always have it with you, and
yeah,
the programs are great.
Yeah.
What's that?
The portability is great, really.
Yeah. And the programs have come a long way, and now they're very, very customizable, where you can make your, custom brushes, like custom, like a pen or pencil or markers, any kind of style. You can emulate anything nowadays. It's really, really cool. It speeds up my my process, because, like, say I'm taking I'll take a picture of somebody's arm, and I just put it right in the program right there, and I can do a quick sketch over it while they're there, so we can kind of agree on shapes and a layout,
So people aren't just walking in and leaving that day with a tattoo. This is something you develop with them and takes a little time.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I'm only drawing stuff up, beforehand. That way I have time to, get what I need to get done, then show them, then get back and forth. Sometimes there's not a lot of that. Sometimes people are like very open to like, well, just do your thing. I know I trust your judgment and I like your artwork, your style. So I'd say, 90% of the time it's like that. But then there's times where there's some back and forth where, you have to tweak things and all that. So I try to get that all done like before, at least the day before. Sometimes it happens in the day of in the morning too. I contact people before they come in. If I have to make any changes, do it. And I think Scott does stuff a little because he's got the iPad Pro. He can do it at the shop when the person's right there and they can look at it. So that's another way to do it,
Yeah, I also do stuff the day of the tattoo. I don't do it ahead of time. I'd like to just have it that day. That way it's fresh and I don't know. It just feels better to me to, not have it just sitting around. And, a lot of times, one problem with, people will want to see it ahead of time, like days ahead of time, and it gives them time to show it to all their friends and their girlfriend and all that and their kids, and they get too much input, and then they're like, oh, my kid wants this to be that. And it's like, that's cool and all, but what really matters is what they want, not what all their friends want, so it's kind of more of a challenge in that respect, so I like to just do it that day and get just their input and, I can tweak it right then when they come in.
Same thing for me too. A lot of it's done, the day before. I tell everybody I'm drawing your tattoo either the Monday before your appointment because I'm off Monday. I do a lot of drawing, but generally it comes down to like that day before where it's trying to get everything tweaked for them. And like Scott said, when you have a lot of time to look at it, think about it, people change their minds and stuff. So it's there's also the fact that there's multiple drawings to do. So you have to be able to have time to do everything. So,
and it takes a lot of time.
A lot of people want to know like how much a tattoo should cost and what goes into determining that. Is there a basic formula, or what should people know about the cost of a tattoo?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people are charging around $150 an hour. That's the standard right now, and then I also tell people, you're only going to probably sit maybe 3 to 4 hours because after 4 hours, your body can't handle it. So there's exceptions. There's people that will sit longer. And those people that ask me and they say they want to, I'll do it. So what I'm trying to get to here is that a lot of people, and I've been getting this lately a lot, is they want to know the full price. And I say, well, just look at it by the sitting because, that way you don't have to come up with all of it at once. It's just like, paying for something on layaway or whatever. You're going to just pay for the sitting. So we take a deposit, usually $100 deposit, and that goes towards the last sitting. And so most sittings are about anywhere from, an hour to maybe 4 hours at the most. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I will tend to not go past, like 3 or 4 hours. Just, at that 4 hour mark, it's no longer even remotely enjoyable for anybody. It's like, I'm tired, they're sore. It's like, sure, they can be troopers and I've had people who are like, I'll sit all day, and I tell them that's cool. I can't, like, I mean, first to admit it, I'm like, thinking, okay, I figure I have to be like on point the whole time. You know what I mean? And if you get tired and worn out, then you're not going to be as I guess as good as you could be when you're fresh, So I like to do the shorter, like 3 hour sessions.
So does that price for sitting down in the chair and being tattooed, does that include all of the artwork that you're doing to prep for the tattoo, or is that an additional charge?
No, we don't charge anything for the time we're drawing because the deposit, like I said, goes towards the tattoo. So the $150 includes our drawing time, basically. So
yeah,
And I can't think of someone I would want to tip more than the person that's leaving a permanent mark on my body and, keep them happy. Is there a general tipping etiquette?
Yeah, I mean, there's an old sign you see in a lot of tattoo shops says, tipping is not a city in China. So that's about as far as we go as what I don't ever suggest anything. I tell people, if you want to, cool. It's up to you, it's,
Yeah.
There's really not, it can run the gamut. It's up to the person, and whatever it is, I'm always just happy, just grateful that they did it. So that's it.
So when people are getting their tattoo, it's usually, a pretty important moment in their life, depending on how many they have. And for you guys, it's this is your business. This is what you're doing every day. What makes a customer a good customer, and what are some jerky behaviors that we should avoid when we go get a tattoo?
Scott's got some stories for you on that.
Oh, I've got years and years of stories. A prepared client is the best. Someone that, they know to bring something to drink and some snacks or something, maybe a pillow. They're prepared. They're not in a hurry. Like, they don't have a meeting to be at 5 o'clock or something like that. Because this isn't something that you can rush through. It takes as long as it takes. And that's how it is. People that move around and jump around and stuff, that's probably the worst. I've literally had to yell at people and just tell them straight up, like, you have to sit on your hands. Because, like some people got to talk with their hands like this, and it doesn't work because everything's connected, So if you're moving your arm, your leg is moving too, and so, yeah, I told the guy one time to sit on his hands, and he did, and then he couldn't talk. It was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, you gotta be comfortable. So we do what we can, but you have to do the rest.
Most people are really awesome. There's definitely going to be one or two here or there that are going to be problems, but generally we're pretty lucky that everybody's like really, really awesome. So stuff happens once in a while, but just like anything else, and you try not to let it affect you. So
I recommend, people definitely have to eat before they come in. You don't want people coming in and having like, low, sugar levels or whatever. You don't want anybody passing out and, getting sick or whatever, because it is trying when you're getting a tattoo, it puts a toll on your body. So you gotta be prepared. You gotta eat before you come in. You gotta rest the night before, get a good night's sleep, stuff like that. Like when I get tattooed, before I get tattooed, I go and eat like it's Thanksgiving. Like I just pig out. Then I'm just like fat and comfortable, and it helps.
That works for me pretty much every day. So I'm good.
So do you have any stories or really weird tales that you can share with us of, that you would only from your perch in the world that you would have the opportunity to observe?
I have a client who he is a professional golf caddy, and he only gets really weird tattoos, just strange oddball stuff, So one day he called me up and he says, "Hey, I got an idea for a new tattoo." So I was immediately excited. I'm like, "Oh, cool. It's going to be something weird." And he says, "I want all this good luck stuff on my chest. I want like a rabbit's foot and a 13 and a horseshoe and, all this kind of stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, what's the catch?" Cause none of that's really crazy. And he said, "Well, the kicker is," he says, "I also want, in golf, it's considered good luck if a bird shits on you." So he wanted some bird shit on it in the tattoo also. So I actually did a big, big plop right on the shoulder, and it was running down the front, and it had little gray and green matter in it and stuff. It looked really cool, and he loved it.
I remember that one. I do remember that.
Yeah. I can imagine you having a lot of fun with that, Scott.
Oh yeah. I'm like, look, it looks real.
Pooch, you mentioned H.R. Geiger was one of your big inspirations. Scott, do you have any artistic inspirations that really, bring out your creative side?
Same as Pooch, pretty much. Giger, Dan Seagrave. There's a lot, and I'm into like a lot of like concept art, for movies and stuff. There's a lot of artists that I don't know. There's too many to name, but I like that, and I like graffiti also. So there's like a wide variety of not just just surreal artists or tattoo artists or whatever, but we all kind of pick from all over the place, so it's kind of hard to nail down one or two, but Giger and Dan Seagrave are probably two of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, an interesting thing about the concept art, I don't know if you've seen this, Scott or Eddie. This is a really it's a cool show called Tales from the Loop, where there's a Swedish artist. I believe he's a film concept artist, and they base the show on his art. So it's like he's doing just sort of realistic landscapes, kind of pastoral landscapes, but then there'll be like these machines or robots that just like are repeating different ones. Very surreal. It's super cool. And the fact is they based a show on his art. He was the inspiration for the show. Wow. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Do you get your whole creative expression out by tattooing, or what other projects do you guys do to be artsy?
Well, I've been painting. I started painting with oil, and I quickly switched over to acrylic because it dries faster. So I could pretty much achieve similar effects with acrylic. So I've been painting with acrylic since I think probably about 2000. I started really diving into it and doing it a lot. So yeah, that's the one thing. And I've done art shows at galleries, Copernason in Santa Monica. I've sold most of my paintings there. It's a great art scene there. People really like strange art there. But I've sold a lot of my paintings there. And a couple of times I did some shows in New York at Last Rites Tattoo, the tattoo gallery. Paul Booth owns it. And also digital. I mean, I've, since I started working with the Cintiq, I've been doing a lot of digital stuff. So now I'm, since we've had to stay home, I have been lucky enough to have a really, really great client that I've been busy working on his stuff. So it's all done digitally. And it enabled me to work from home, what I didn't even think I'd be able to. So.
And you've created some guitar designs for some really cool people, haven't you?
Yeah, I've painted 2 guitars for Rob Barrett from Cannibal Corpse. I've also painted a guitar for the late Steve King, who was a producer for Kid Rock in Detroit, I believe he lived. I painted his bass. I've also done a bass for the bass player from Mo, the jam band Mo, and the drummer did his drum head from Mo.
And yep. Scott, your artistic endeavors are a little bit more apocalyptical.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I don't paint. Paint doesn't agree with me. I wish I could. I see what Pooch does on canvas, and I'm just, flabbergasted by his tenacity, because it takes a long time, So yeah, I'm as a hobby more into photography and building cars and welding, and I like to get my hands greasy, and I built my Mad Max car, and I did all the welding on it. It's a Beetle, and I just put a supercharger on it. So I'm kind of more the gearhead than the fine art guy.
And there's kind of like a cosplay element to it when you go out to Wasteland and
yeah, I go to Wasteland weekend every year. I take the car out there. It's out in California, and while you're there, it's an immersive event. So you're always in whatever your stuff is. So you got to make the outfits. We make our camp, everything. We literally make everything. So it's a lot of fun. You got to be real creative to make stuff look real, like convincing. Now it's canceled this year.
Canceled. Okay.
Everything. The whole goddamn year is canceled.
Everything's canceled.
Mad.
Well, this is an interesting time for us, this COVID pandemic, and it's never seen anything like this in my life. And, I know a lot of people are hurting financially, but, there's some good things that coming out of this too. The earth is healing.
Yep.
We're all reflecting and, figuring out things on a deeper level. How are you guys dealing with the impact of this pandemic?
Well, I mean, like I said, I was lucky enough to get a really good friend of mine who I tattoo, who is starting up a new business, and he wanted me to design a bunch of things. So that kept me busy. I really was shocked that it fell in my lap, So I was just working. Since we had to close the shop, I was working on my computer every day, Then I got a commission for a painting. Again, I was like, okay, this is great. Then a t-shirt design came my way. So I did not expect to be able to work from home at all, and I put it out there. I was trying to, get some painting commissions and stuff, but I had enough, and I've been busy. So I think also a lot's changed just in my daily routine. One of the big things is we haven't gone out to eat in 2 months, 3 months now, I'd say, Yeah. And let me tell you something. We were going out to eat like 3 or 4 days a week. And the money that I've saved is incredible, And also just, cooking at home. My wife cooks at home. I make the drinks. I don't cook. So, but she benefits from that as well. So
Pooch makes very good drinks, by the way.
Thanks. That's my other hobby is, tiki mixology. So I've been into that for a while. But, just my daily routines changed. And being home a lot, I had just gotten a puppy. I got a French bulldog in December. So being home with him a lot has been great. And at this point, I'm, kind of like, I've been tattooing a little bit, maybe just like one a day here and there. And maybe from 1 to 4 to 5 p.m. and then I'm home, and we take the dogs out at 8 o'clock or 8:30. And I kind of like this. I'm like, well, you know what? I think it comes down to that whole thing where they say, you don't live to work, you work to live. And I'm going to continue to do commissions and work at home stuff. If anything comes my way, I'm going to do that and tattoo a little bit less, just kind of a little. I'd like to start earlier instead of later and be able to be home by, 5 or 6 or something like that. Whereas before I was coming home at like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely changed a lot for me as far as where I want to be and where I want to go with it. I don't know. I was just thinking too, it's also a big reset for everybody. I think everybody's outlooks on everything are going to change. What's important is a little different now for everybody. I think we don't take things for granted anymore. I mean, I just look at it like, hey, I'm happy to just be able to work,
Remember the stuff we used to complain about?
Exactly.
Seems so small.
It's meaningless now,
Yeah. I have a friend who has a automotive restoration place, and I've been working with him restoring old cars. So I was for probably a week. I was working on a $250,000 vintage Porsche, and now we're building an Eleanor Mustang, and we got a Grand Sport Corvette over there, and an old Carmen Ghia. Like, we're working on like really cool cars, and I can do most everything in that realm, like whether it's body work or putting an interior in or welding and fabricating parts and everything. So I've been doing that, and it's convenient because it's close. I made a joke with my mom. I was talking to her on the phone and one day, and she said, this was like kind of a few weeks ago, and she said, do you have enough gas in your van? And I said, yeah, I'm getting 3 weeks to the gallon.
My gas bill has never been so low ever.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I think, what you said, like a lot of people have had a lot of time for a little introspection and, can see that they can do things in a different way. Like, I think a lot of companies now are going to have people working from home, and, they don't have to have so much overhead, to function properly, and a lot of times, I'm sure there's been a lot of people that have decided they wanted, might want to do something else, and they've never had the time to even think about it before, because they're in the grind,
Like a podcast.
like a podcast.
Exactly.
I started a new podcast. It's fun.
Where can we see it?
It's on YouTube. It's called In the Mouth of Music. And Dean, who works at the shop with us, he's on there. And Diego, the guy that owns the car place. So we just talk about music, and we review albums and bands, and just generally, talk smack. It's fun.
Any other projects either of you want to plug?
Yeah, I have an Etsy store. Just throw some merch up. I got these neck gaiter things. You can put them over your face. It's kind of like a face mask. And I got some shirts and stuff up there.
I hope my romp shirt is on the way.
It is. It's being produced right now. I checked them.
What about you, Pooch? Anything you want to put out in the world?
So, right before the shop closed, my friend was setting up a printful store and tying it into the website. So the website is alteredstatetattoo.com. So right now it's the web store. So I have my prints, my shirts, they're all on there. Everything is, to be ordered through the mail. It's great because I don't have to ship anything. They get the order, they make it, they ship it. I don't have to do anything with it. So it's great. And it's been working out pretty good. So as you know, you bought a shirt, Eddie. So
I'm a big fan.
Thanks.
Well, Michael, Scott, thank you so much for your time today and dispelling some myths and talking about all this fun stuff. And I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
There is a great disturbance in the force. I have felt it. Eddie's podcast? They prophesied this day would come, and now it's time for Jackie's segment and her insight on the Star Wars universe. I must stop her. Commander Cody, the time has come. Execute Order 66.
And now it's time for the Jackie segment, where we are going to talk about Season 7, Episode 11 of The Clone Wars. Jackie, are you with me?
Hi, I'm with you. How are you today?
I'm really good. I'm so good.
How good are you?
Episode 11 of The Clone Wars. Maul has been taken prisoner by Ahsoka and the clones, and the Jedi Order is coming to an end as we know it. Shattered, Part 3 of the show's story arc, takes place on the eve of Order 66, which we know from the prequels as Darth Sidious's plan to wipe out all the Jedi.
As Ahsoka and Bo-Katan look out at the smoking remains of Mandalore, Bo's a little sentimental and says, I really wish I was good at something other than war. Ahsoka thinks for a minute and reminds her, your people are going to need a different kind of leader after this. I mean, Mandalore has gone from Duchess Satine's rule, which was a very pacifist way of life, to Darth Maul, who was the exact opposite. And now they need a new leader. And Ahsoka points that out to Bo.
As the two warriors speak, Rex comes to Ahsoka to participate in a holocall with the Jedi Council, where she tells him she has Maul and will be returning Maul to the Council.
We walk right into the Council meeting as we know it from Revenge of the Sith. The Jedi Council immediately thank Ahsoka for capturing Darth Maul, and Yoda says that she's done the Republic a great service. Yoda then informs her that Obi-Wan is hunting down General Grievous, and Ahsoka points out that the war is very close to over. She had hoped to speak to Skywalker, but Yoda tells her that that is not possible. Mace Windu is less certain that the war is close to over. That depends on the Chancellor. The dark side has been very strong, and the Chancellor has seemed to be in the middle of the dark side. So Mace Windu is in the process of figuring out that Palpatine is Sidious, and Sidious is the one, as we know, who was the architect of the Clone Wars. So again, this fits into Revenge of the Sith very, very neatly.
But Yoda stays on the call, sensing there might be something wrong with Ahsoka.
Rather than relaying any information to Anakin via Yoda, she chooses to hold back the knowledge that she has, which is that Darth Maul revealed to her that Anakin Skywalker has been groomed to be Sidious's apprentice for years. She chooses not to reveal that to Yoda. And I think it's very interesting to think about what might have been if she had chosen to confide in Yoda there, or just to give Yoda the information to pass on to Anakin. But I do think it was very important to Ahsoka she had such a strong reaction when Maul said Anakin is being groomed as Sidious's apprentice. She had such a strong reaction to that. I really think she wanted to see Anakin's face and see his reaction when she told him that.
This is where we get into the politics of Mandalore, and we see Bo and Ahsoka discussing the need for new leadership.
It's interesting because we don't know a lot about Mandalorian politics from this point in time to the point where we pick up with the TV show The Mandalorian. We know at this moment in time that they are a very prideful, strong technology warrior race of people, but we don't know how they ended up living in the sewers of these small, obscure planets and never taking their helmets off. Again, we very clearly see Bo-Katan speaking face to face with Ahsoka and other people. They clearly take their helmets off. Hopefully we find out what the change is when Mandalorian Season 2 comes back.
En route to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, in the calm of hyperspace, both Rex and Ahsoka reflect. It's a beautiful visual as they travel through hyperspace, and you can really see their conflicted feelings about the Clone Wars.
Ahsoka says, we were told we were keepers of the peace, but ever since I was a Padawan, I've been a warrior. There is clearly a conflict within her, and I think that's one of the reasons why she and Obi-Wan were not as close, because really the politics of all this just really frustrated her. She was guided by her moral compass, and it really would bother her when Obi-Wan was guided by politics or the greater good. And I think it especially bothered her that after a while, as you watch the Clone Wars cartoon series, it feels like Obi-Wan is just using that, well, we're keepers of the peace, we can't really get involved, we're not warriors, as an excuse. You see him use it on Mandalore with Duchess Satine, and you get the feeling that everyone's frustrated with him because at this juncture, he's more using it as just a, the same way you say to your kids, I'm your dad now, do what I say. That was his spiel. We're not warriors. I can't participate in your war. So Ahsoka does have a bunch of mixed feelings about it.
Rex and Ahsoka have a discussion about the clones and their friendship, and this is all right before Sidious issues Order 66.
Literally go from this moment to Rex leaving for an update meeting with the other clones. He thinks he's going to find out how Obi-Wan is doing with General Grievous, and instead Sidious gives Order 66, saying very specifically the Jedi are to be executed for their crimes of treason. So as Rex leaves for this meeting, Ahsoka is standing on the bridge alone at this point, and she starts having all these voices come to her through the Force. And you get a Hayden Christensen appearance. You get both Anakin Skywalker voices, both Matt Latner and Hayden Christensen come to her through the Force. Mace Windu, Sidious, aka Palpatine, all those voices come to her through the Force, and she doesn't understand completely because she doesn't have a place for it yet, but she hears Mace Windu's death or the battle. She hears Anakin's betrayal of the Jedi Order, and she just really doesn't know what to think of it. What she doesn't know is that democracy dies as Darth Vader is born.
But they still haven't brought back David Prowse, the original actor who played the body of Darth Vader.
Why don't we leave that for another time? Now, as we continue with the Clone Wars, we know that Maul is also sensing things through the Force as Ahsoka is having her Force revelations.
Ahsoka immediately approaches Rex, stating something is wrong with Anakin.
Rex and his brothers surround Ahsoka, and they start shooting at her. She immediately goes into warrior mode and is deflecting them and trying to save herself. She battles her way out of the room to very intense musical accompaniment. If you were in another room listening to this and not watching it, you would know it was a battle scene. Rex is able to fight through the chip enough to say to Ahsoka, go look up Fives' file. Fives was an ARC trooper who knew about the biochip implants, and Rex knew that Fives knew about them.
We know about Fives from prior episodes.
Fives did have his own small arc on an earlier season of Clone Wars, so we absolutely know who Fives is. So we've had this suspicion for a long time. Meanwhile, as Ahsoka is fighting her way out of the room and escapes, the other clones are looking at Rex like, she got away. Are you all right, dude? And he just says, well, I'm really, really tired. And then I think personally, to compensate for the loss of Ahsoka, he immediately orders that Maul is executed, and he reiterates that Ahsoka is to be killed, the Jedi are to be killed for treason, and any clones that do not follow this directive from Sidious will also be executed.
Ahsoka approaches Maul with some trepidation. Is this your doing? Choose your words carefully. The clones turned against me. I don't know why.
This causes the light bulb to go off for Maul. Here he has the full understanding that Sidious has used the Jedi's own clones against them, and that he used the clones to wipe out the Jedi. Now, at this point, Maul misreads Ahsoka's intention, thinking that she has come to join him, and that is not the case at all. She will free him if he provides some chaos to help her escape. Don't make me regret this, Ahsoka says to Maul as she releases him. Just go out and make chaos so that I can figure out what's going on.
Distraction, diversion, you are talking about total chaos, and it is so beautifully intertwined with the score. Kevin Kiner, who is following John Williams as the Star Wars scorer, does an unbelievable job complementing the animation visuals with this emotional Latin music.
Ahsoka comes across a trio of very distressed little astromechs, and I really feel strongly that one of these little droids is Chopper, Hera's droid from Rebels. The voice seems so familiar. But anyway, these astromechs agree to help her, and they immediately plug into the ship, and they're able to find the file on Fives so that she's able to learn about the implant.
Maul tears a path through the 501st Forces aboard the destroyer, armed only with the Force. This scene is like the Vader scene going through Rebellion soldiers one by one. Meanwhile, Ahsoka and the droids kidnap Rex and take him to the medical bay.
They are having a difficult time locating the chip. They've kidnapped Rex. They've got him to med bay. They've laid him out. The other clone soldiers are trying desperately to get in there because the only thing they're focused on is killing Ahsoka. And somehow Ahsoka needs to find this chip because it's not showing up on the scans. So she starts joining the Force with Rex. I am one with the Force and the Force is with me. I am one with the Force and the Force is with me. Rex starts repeating this back to her, and before you know it, they've located the chip via the Force, and she is able to instruct one of the droids to go ahead and take it out, as all the other clones are, basically busting their way through the door.
By the time Rex wakes and reaches for his blasters at his side, the surgery's been completed and it looks like he's his old self again. He blasts his own men to save Ahsoka. The doors are closed.
He immediately apologizes and says to Ahsoka, I'm so sorry for what happened earlier. She, of course, just waves it off and says, don't worry about it. You weren't yourself. And he says, but I almost killed you. And she's like, listen, what I really need to know is how widespread is this? And Rex immediately tells her it's all of us, that the entire Grand Army of the Republic has been ordered to hunt down and kill the Jedi Knights.
The clones begin to break through the door again. The music swells. Next week, episode 12, The Clone Wars come to an end. So I'd like to thank Jackie for joining me on this awesome discussion about episode 11 of The Clone Wars, and we have one more episode to go. Jackie, thank you for joining me. I love you.
We love you too.
I asked Scott White and Pooch to be on this episode because I've always been fascinated with tattoos, their place in our culture, why people would get them. In fact, when I was in college, I studied motion picture productions, and I actually made a documentary on tattoos. I remember what my professor told me. Eddie, whatever you do, don't get a tattoo. Well, I did not follow his advice and jumped headfirst into the world of tattoos. I've learned that tattoo artists are not only have this incredible creative ability, but they also have a certain kind of wisdom that others don't. And this has always fascinated me. Now for a trip in the Wayback Machine. 25 years ago, here is the very short documentary I made about tattoos called Body Art.
Tattooing, in my opinion, is the ultimate form of individual expression.
Bill the Cat. Bill the Cat. I'm a big Bill the Cat fan. If they had Opus, I'd get Opus too.
My friends were either painting cars or making cars or fixing them. I was into drawing, designing, and researching tattooing from the New York City Public Library to wherever I could possibly afford to travel to. Actually, when I went to get my, first tattoo was a homemade tattoo. It was an initial of a girlfriend, which has since been covered.
I've seen people with "fuck you" written on the inside of their mouth.
It's just going into a tattoo studio and seeing all the flash that's up on the wall, and it's like you can lose your mind.
It's nothing like paper or canvas or anything you've ever seen. Skin is resilient. It has a living quality about it.
I don't tattoo people that are drunk or stoned. I do doctors, I do lawyers, I do tattooed a brain surgeon a couple months ago.
As I was in the chair, I was looking up all the flash that's on the wall and saying, oh wow, that's going to be my next one. That's going to be my next one.
There are some tattoo artists out there that are quite affluent because of tattooing. They've made millions of dollars doing it.
Some of my favorite tattoos are eagles, skulls, roses, dragons, you know, different type of stuff too. You know, some of the newer wave tattooing I get into, you know, crazy, weird-looking spiral glyphic stuff that you have to look into to see, you know, what it is.
Tattoos don't have to have meaning.
When I do a tattoo or any gentleman that works for me tattoo, we lay it out so it'll look good now and 30 years from now.
I think tattoos are incredible. I mean, the way you can permanently embed dyes and skin stays there forever. I mean, it's neat.
As far as machinery goes, we try to go back as far as we can with the machinery aspect of tattooing. It's backwards. Instead of trying to go forward and be advanced with it, we try to go back to how the old masters refined their machinery.
So I'm not into getting like looking at the books over there, like people with like their whole body painted. I'm not into that, but you know, one or two, you get your reasons for it.
I like to have tattoos that when people are a block away across the street, they can look at me and tell what it is.
I like things that are colorful and stand out.
The specialty field, portraits, traditional, Japanese. You've got Australian style tattooing, English style tattooing, Samoan. There's probably about 15, 20 different styles out there.
Tattooed like the side of a girl's head, That's pretty unusual, you know.
Being tattooed is an addiction. The tattoos that I have are art.
I still get it because I think it looks cool.
Tattoo artists got to keep on pressing on.
And that brings this week's show to an end. I'd like to thank my special guests, Scott White and Michael Pucciarelli, Pooch, from Altered State Tattoos, and my lovely wife, Jacquie, for her incredible insight on the Star Wars universe. Join me next week for a brand new edition of Eddie's podcast. And in the meantime, please do something that matters.
So another chapter ends, another book concludes, and another story has been told. Are we better for it? I'm afraid the answer to that has been lost for hundreds of years. Okay, nonetheless, be sure to join us next week for another edition of Eddie's podcast. And subscribe, damn it. Go to www.eddiepodcast.com. Put it this way, if I could subscribe twice, I probably would. Lastly, I leave you with an age-old quote by the beard of Zeus. Go do something that matters. Stay classy. Stay safe.